In the shadow of oppression, when the land of Israel trembled beneath the iron hand of foreign rule, a family of resolute faith and steadfast courage emerged to defy tyranny. Their story, etched into history, begins with the priest Mattathias, a man who refused to bow to the imposition of false gods. But it was his son, Judas, who rose in the hour of need, earning a name that would thunder across generations, Judas Maccabeus, the Hammer. Judas stepped forth to lead his people, not with the wealth of empires nor the numbers of mighty armies, but with the strength of his conviction and the faith of his countrymen. As the flames of rebellion spread, Israel was a land divided. Some sought compromise with their oppressors, but many lifted their eyes to heaven and followed Judas. The young warrior girded himself for battle as though the very spirit of his ancestors guided him. In every skirmish, in every clash of swords, Judas seemed more than a man. He was like a lion, striking terror in the hearts of his enemies. He sought out the ungodly and pursued lawlessness wherever it dwelled. Those who troubled his people learned to fear the name of Maccabeus, for salvation prospered in his hands. And so word of his exploits spread. When Apollonius, a commander of the enemy, gathered a great army from Samaria to crush Israel's rising fire, Judas did not falter. He met the formidable host with unyielding strength and struck Apollonius down, taking his sword, a weapon that would become a symbol of his defiance. With that blade, Judas waged war all his days, each stroke a declaration that Israel would not be subdued. Next came Seron, the commander of Syria's forces. He too underestimated the resolve of Judas and his band of faithful men. Seron sought to make his name by crushing the rebellion, assembling an army of the ungodly to wreak vengeance upon the sons of Israel. Their ranks swelled with warriors eager to plunder and destroy, their ambition fueled by the king's desire to erase Israel's strength from history. But Judas did not falter, even when doubt flickered among his own ranks. When his small company saw the strength of Seron's forces, fear began to whisper in their hearts. They looked to Judas and they said, "How can we, few and faint with hunger, stand against so vast a multitude?" With unwavering resolve, Judas answered them, "Victory does not come from numbers but from heaven. Strength is divinely given, and it is no harder for God to save by many or by few. They come to destroy, to plunder, to rob us of our laws and our lives. But we fight for righteousness, for our families, for our heritage. Fear not, they shall fall before us." And with that declaration, Judas led his small band into combat against the mighty host of Seron's army. Though few in number, Judas's men were fueled by a fierce determination, their resolve unshaken by the enormity of the enemy forces before them. The air crackled with anticipation as the two forces stood on the brink of battle, the fate of Israel teetering in the balance. With faith as their shield and righteousness as their cause, they charged into the fray, ready to defy the might of Seron's forces. The battle was fierce, the odds insurmountable, but in the going up of Beth-horon, Seron's forces were crushed. Judas and his warriors pursued them as they fled, inflicting heavy losses upon the enemy. 800 fell that day in the name of Israel's freedom, and the rest scattered into the land of the Philistines. Judas's name echoed across kingdoms. His deeds were whispered from nation to nation until even the king of the Seleucid Empire, Antiochus IV, heard of his victories. With each triumph, fear and dread of Judas Maccabeus spread like wildfire, igniting both admiration and rage. But Antiochus, consumed by indignation, vowed vengeance. He would send a force so overwhelming that none would remember the name of Judas. And yet Judas did not stand alone. Israel rallied behind him, inspired by his courage and his faith. Though the task ahead seemed monumental, the hammer of Israel refused to yield. Antiochus, facing growing unrest in his own territories, found his treasury depleted. His lavish spending and political dissent left him vulnerable, forcing him to march eastward to gather tributes from Persian provinces. Before departing, he left Lysias, an honorable and cunning commander, to oversee the empire's affairs from the Euphrates to Egypt. Lysias was charged with a terrifying mission: to crush Judas Maccabeus, obliterate Israel's resistance, and erase its people's identity from the earth. He took with him half the king's forces, including war elephants and siege engines, determined to uproot the strength of the Jewish people. But Judas faced these impending threats not with despair, but with preparation. His mission was clear: defend his homeland, cleanse the ungodly from Judea's cities, and restore his people's freedom to worship as their ancestors had commanded. As the armies of the Seleucid Empire marched closer, the battles grew darker, fiercer, and more desperate. Judas knew he could not outmatch Antiochus's forces through sheer size. Instead, he relied on strategy, faith, and the indomitable will of his people. Time and again, his warriors struck down larger armies, catching them off guard with brilliant tactics and unwavering determination. The victories were not only physical but spiritual. Judas rekindled hope in his people, uniting them under the banner of God's law. He cleansed sanctuaries and restored the temple, driving out idol worship and rededicating it to the one true God, a moment that would become the foundation of Hanukkah, the Festival of Lights. For Judas Maccabeus, these battles were never about personal glory or power. He fought for the survival of his people's identity, their faith, their culture. Enemies came and went, kings rose and fell, but Judas remained steadfast, a symbol of resilience and faith. He was a lion in the service of his people, and his roar still echoes through the halls of history. The legacy of Judas Maccabeus is not simply one of battles won or enemies defeated. It is a legacy of defiance against oppression, of unity forged through faith, and of hope kindled even in the darkest of times. His victories inspired generations, showing that strength is not measured by numbers or wealth, but by conviction and purpose. Though Judas eventually fell in battle, his spirit lived on. The Maccabean revolt marked a turning point in Jewish history, securing a brief but vital period of independence for Judea. It reminded the world that faith and freedom are causes worth fighting for. Today, as the candles of Hanukkah are lit each year, the story of Judas Maccabeus and his warriors resurfaces. It is a story of courage, faith, and resilience, the enduring power of a people who refused to surrender their identity, who stood firm against overwhelming odds, and who proved that even in the shadow of oppression, the light of hope burns brightest. Thanks for your visit. How did you like the indomitable spirit of Judas Maccabeus and the Maccabean legacy? Do remember to like, share, and subscribe for future stories. Always stay curious and faithful.